1958 essay, The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. After the reading, we will have a lead share, and the meeting will be open for participation or questions. Tonight, Chris will be reading the essay.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm an alcoholic. I'm reading The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety by Bill Wilson. I think that many oldsters who have put our AA booze cure to severe but successful tests still find they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA, the development of much more real maturity and balance, which is to say humility in our relations with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges that so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance, urges quite appropriate to age 17, prove to be an impossible way of life when we are at age 47 or 57. Since AA began, I've taken immense wallops in all these areas because of my failure to grow up, emotionally and spiritually. My God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible, and how very painful to discover finally that all along we had the cart before the horse. Then comes the final agony of seeing how awfully wrong we have been, but still finding ourselves unable to get off the emotional merry-go-round. How to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result, and so into easy, happy, and good living. Well, that's not only the neurotic's problem, it's the problem of life itself for all of us who have got to the point of real willingness to hew to right principles in all our affairs. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us. That's the place so many of us AA oldsters have come to, and it's a hell of a spot, literally. How shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. I've recently come to believe that this can be achieved. I believe so because I begin to see many benighted ones, folks like you and me, commencing to get results. Last autumn, depression, having really no rational cause at all, almost took me to the cleaners. I began to be scared that I was in for another long chronic spell. Considering the grief I've had with depressions, it wasn't a bright prospect. I kept asking myself, why can't the 12 steps work to release depression? By the hour, I stared at the St. Francis prayer. It's better to comfort than to be comforted. Here was the formula, all right, but why didn't it work? Suddenly, I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence on people or circumstances to supply me with prestige, security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them. And when defeat came, so did my depression. There wasn't a chance of making the outgoing love of St. Francis a workable and joyous way of life until these fatal and almost absolute dependencies were cut away. Because I had over the years undergone a little spiritual development, the absolute quality of these frightful dependencies had never before been so starkly revealed. Reinforced by what grace I could secure in prayer, I found I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, indeed upon any set of circumstances whatsoever. Then only could I be free to love as Francis had. Emotional and instinctual satisfactions I saw were really the extra dividends of having love, offering love, and expressing a love appropriate to each relation of life. Plainly, I could not avail myself of God's love until I was able to offer it back to Him by loving others as He would have me. And I couldn't possibly do that so long as I was victimized by false dependencies. For my dependency meant demand, a demand for the possession and control of the people and the conditions surrounding me. While those words, absolute demand, may look like a gimmick, they were the ones that helped to trigger my release into my present degree of stability and quietness of mind, qualities which I'm now trying to consolidate by offering love to others regardless of the return to me. This seems to be the primary healing circuit, an outgoing love of God's creation and his people, by means of which we avail ourselves of his love for us. It is most clear that the current can't flow until our paralyzing dependencies are broken, and broken at depth. Only then can we possibly have a glimmer of what adult love really is. Spiritual calculus, you say? Not a bit of it. Watch any AA of 6 months working with a new 12th step case. If the case says, "To the devil with you," the 12th stepper only smiles and turns to another case. He doesn't feel frustrated or rejected. If his next case responds and in turn starts to give love and attention to other alcoholics, yet gives none back to him, the sponsor is happy about it anyway. He still doesn't feel rejected. Instead, he rejoices that his one-time prospect is sober and happy. If his next following case turns out in later time to be his best friend or romance, then the sponsor is most joyful. But he well knows that his happiness is a byproduct, the extra dividend of giving without any demand for a return. The really stabilizing thing for him was having and offering love to that strange drunk on his doorstep. That was Francis at work, powerful and practical, minus dependency and minus demand. In the first 6 months of my own sobriety, I worked hard with many alcoholics. Not a one responded. Yet this work kept me sober. It wasn't a question of those alcoholics giving me anything. My stability came out of trying to give, not out of demanding that I receive. Thus, I think it can work out with emotional sobriety. If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root of it some unhealthy dependency and its consequent unhealthy demand. Let us, with God's help, continually surrender these hobbling demands. Then we can be set free to live and love. We may then be able to 12th step ourselves and others into emotional sobriety. Of course, I haven't offered you a really new idea, only a gimmick that has started to unhook several of my own hexes at depth. Nowadays, my brain no longer races compulsively in either elation, grandiosity, or depression. I have been given a quiet place in bright sunshine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. So I am very excited to introduce the speakers, and I'm so glad that they agreed to do this. We have 2 speakers tonight, Emerson from Long Beach and JP, who lives in Vietnam. And Emerson told me before the meeting that he's going to go first, and then JP is going to share. So you two just have fun with it. You know, if you want to, Emerson, after you share, if you want to say some more after JP, you know, whatever you guys want to do, and then let me know when you're ready to call on people that you want to hear from. So thank you. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Emerson. I'm an addict, alcoholic, codependent, overeater, and I used to have an eating disorder. And the reason I say all that is because it's the truth. Part of emotional sobriety for me is being honest about who I am, what this disease means to me, and what it's, you know, done to me. Frightful dependencies, paralyzing, you know, the words that Bill uses are so true. I've been coming to this meeting for probably, I don't know, over 6 months, maybe close to a year. And I really didn't understand that at first. You know, I would read the letter and listen to it. But the demands I've made on God, on other people, just literally would paralyze me into anger, depression. I mean, you name it. But anyway, I have, it's an amazing letter. And, the more I read it, the more I get out of it. I think I'll just start at the beginning. I come from a family that was very, very, very successful. My father was a politician, a lawyer, a author, a community organizer. My mom was a school teacher and a librarian. And I knew at a young age they had a plan for me. And I knew what that plan was. At our dinner table, we didn't talk about going to college. We talked about what college you're going to go to. I mean, there was all of these expectations. And from a young age, for whatever reason, I just knew, I just felt like I couldn't do it. I felt like I couldn't do it. And then also, and I'll be very honest in this meeting, being a man of color, there was so much guilt and shame over having so much opportunity that I've had more opportunity than most of the people on the face of the earth. And as a direct result of this disease, I wasted every single opportunity. I mean, I've been to an incredible private university, a state university, 6 prisons. My poor family, they just didn't know what to do. I mean, these people worked hard. They were involved in the community. And, it started off good. I mean, in high school and stuff, I was an athlete and went to college for that. And then slowly things just got really bad over time. Drinking and using and, everything that goes with it. The harder I would try and hold on to something, the quicker it would go. But I had no idea where this disease was going to take me. I like where it talks about the demands we make. And for me, the demands were simple. Everything had to look a certain way. It had to be a certain way. I demanded things from God. I can only imagine how the number of miracles that I've missed in my life because it didn't look like I wanted. It didn't come in the time that I wanted. Everything had to be a certain way, and I was very demanding about it. And of course, things never worked out that way. So what would I do? I would try harder. That was always my default, try harder. And one of the funny things is in this, in the program, and I'm grateful to my sponsor, JP, I had to learn that, once I got involved in this program, I was still being demanding, but I was, kind of doing it under the guise of this is spiritual now. I'm still demanding stuff, but I'm journaling, I'm praying, I'm meditating. All the time I'm still demanding, but it just looked a little different than it did before. I was given a sobriety date on May 9th, 2020. I've had other ones, 5 years, 3 years, but this was a God-given sobriety date. I was out driving. I had a open quart of Fireball. I had a meth pipe, a little powdered cocaine, and some recreational heroin, and I was going to get more. And as I was driving, and this is exactly the way it happened, I felt this electricity, this pressure. I didn't hear a voice of God or anything like that, but this pressure was overwhelming. I pulled over and I absolutely knew that I had to stop. If I didn't stop, I was never going to come back, and I knew it. So, and this is in the middle, I had money and and I just put all the stuff on the street. I'm sure somebody, found it and got it. And I went home and I slept for a couple of days. I didn't go through any withdrawals. No cravings. It was removed from me that day. So my sobriety date is 5/10/20. And I started going to meetings, but I was so struck by this spiritual experience that I went and saw a therapist, and I told her about it. And she's like, I believe you. I absolutely believe you. And so I started working with her. And we worked for about 4 months, and we, she had EMDR and different things. And she said, you just need to go do AA. You need to do spiritual AA. You need to find a God of your understanding that'll work for you. And from then, it's just been like this journey. I started out in BBA. And then in BBA, I met JP. Then I started doing thoughts. And it's all been like, I used to always ask God, like, make your way clear, show me the path. And what I found is when my eyes are open, my heart is open, the path is actually pretty clear. It's pretty hard to miss, to be honest. And she gave me a number of a guy, and we were doing some BDA stuff. Then I met another person and went to thoughts, and things just unfolded as they were supposed to. And I am eternally grateful. I'm very, very, very grateful. Some of the things I've learned on this path were illuminating to me. They really were. I had spent years and years and years in I'll call it mainstream AA, trying to find God. And when I come to find out that God's right here, He's right here. All I had to do was open my eyes and be aware. All I had to do was look at what had happened in my life, and it's absolutely undeniable. It's undeniable. I mean, there cannot be that many coincidences. I can't be led from this person to this person to this person to that meeting. Everything is it's just like a chess game. It really is. It's just like a chess game. And I don't even have to know where to move. I get directed where to move. I get directed where to move if I'm just aware. And so that's, I really work. Let me rephrase that. I try and open my eyes to be aware. When I say open my eyes, it may be through nature, through a song, through the beach, through diving, you name it, whatever it's through, I try and open my eyes, my heart, to actually see where I'm supposed to go, to see what I'm supposed to do. And I've never been let down. I have never been let down. And so I'm on this path with JP. We're doing this work. And just, again, so many things have been illuminating. We were doing the 9th step. And I don't know how I got this idea in mainstream AA, but the idea I got that somehow by doing this 9th step, it was going to relieve me of this guilt and stuff. I had no idea that this was to make me a maximum service to God and others. I had no idea. And then if you go up to the next page, and this just blew me away. It says, and I'm paraphrasing, basically it says, everything will come to naught if you don't do this. It's like if you like everything you've done up to now is worthless unless you complete this. I don't know how many times I've read that stuff. I've had people talk to me about that. But I guess when the student's ready, the student can hear, the teacher appears. And so all of this has just been like light bulbs going on, awareness. My awareness is going up, I've been open to a world of new speakers, not all AA speakers, just different speakers, spiritual speakers. And whatever happened to me back on the 9th of, on 5/9/2020, it's literally like something in me got cracked open where I just want more. I want to not find what's here because it's already here, but I want to be closer to it, be more aware of it, and be part of it. And that's what's been happening in my life. I've learned tools that have revolutionized, and I mean that, my way of dealing with people in the world. My mom passed away May 24th. She was 91. And before she passed, my brother ran an oil company and several in Africa. My sister's she does the finances for the city of Palm Springs. And my mom, called me to her bedside. I went out to visit her and she said, look, I think the cancer's back. I don't want to go through surgery, right? None of that. I need you to fight for me. Don't let them keep me alive any longer than I need to. I want things to, I want nature to take its course. And I told her I would do that. And, on the 24th, things just went downhill quickly. And one of the things I've learned from my sponsor, because my sponsor, God bless him, he will never tell me, this is what you need to do. These are your options. Find. He's like, you need to go to God. You need to ask for the power. You need to sit and meditate until you get an answer, or take the best answer that you think he would have you. And I knew that I had to have this conversation with my brother and sister that we need to just let mom go, allow her to have some dignity. And, my sister was yelling and screaming. My brother's, well, she can survive it. But I got this power from asking that enabled me to fight for my mom with them, tell them what I needed to tell them, and then step back and leave it alone. My brother took a walk at the hospital. My sister took a walk, and about maybe 45 minutes later, they came back and they said, you know what, you're right. We need to let her go with some dignity. She doesn't want to go through this stuff anymore. And so we talked to the nurses, and they had some kind of medication that was keeping her blood pressure artificially high that made her real uncomfortable. And they stopped giving her this medication. I think it was 23 minutes later, she passed peacefully, surrounded by her family. And I would have never had that kind of power to have that kind of conversation with my family, because in my mind, even though I'm the oldest, I would have been the least credible because of my past. I was the one that, they could have easily, well, you were kind of out of our lives and her lives for quite a while. What are you doing telling us what to do? But by learning these tools of how to ask for what's needed from my higher power, and be given the power to do these things that are still uncomfortable to do them and step away and allow what needs to happen. I've seen it over and over and over and over. Most recently, now keep in mind, I've been to prison 3 times. I have a pretty extensive felony record. But I worked in treatment for quite a while, so I have some, certificates and licenses and different things like that. But I had just gotten done with some ankle surgery, and I was looking on a website that I hadn't looked at before about a job, and I saw this job pop up for substance use navigator, working in the ER. And I thought, wow, that sounds really exciting. But immediately my first thought was my record. I've done too much. It's going to pop up, yada, 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 yada. But again, I asked for the needed power. God, what would you have me do? And he's like, apply for these 3. So I did. And I got job offers from all 3 of these hospitals, all 3. And the one I wanted to work at was was St. Mary's in Long Beach, which is it's an inner city hospital. We serve mainly the homeless, people where English is a second language, things like that. And so, we went through the background check because you work in the ER and blah, blah, blah. And so they said, well, actually, a few things popped up on your record we need to talk to you about. So I went in, I spoke to the president or the director of HR and the head of legal. We talked for quite a while, and they said, look, what we want you to do is we want you to tell us your story. Why did you get into drugs? What kind of stuff did you do? What sent you to prison? What got you to change? They basically kind of wanted a biography of my life. And so right away, my first thought is, okay, how can I make going to prison 3 times sound good? I mean, I need to kind of like figure this out. And, it's amazing to me that the people that need to be in my life get put in my life. I was going to another meeting and I knew a guy or had heard a guy share about he had a similar situation where he was going to get a job as a machinist in the military working on jets. And he needed a high level security clearance. He had a prison background, but they were willing to talk to him. And so I talked to him and we talked for quite a while. And he said, look, you tell him exactly who you are, what you did, how it affected you and those around you, this, that, and the other. And he goes, don't be afraid to mention God. You tell them the truth. You tell these people the truth. And he sent me a copy of the letter that he used. And to me, it was like way over the top. So I asked God for direction and the needed power. And so I wrote this letter and I told them the truth about me. I mean, I probably told them things they didn't need to know, but I absolutely told them the truth. And I told them, the type of crimes I committed and this and that and the other. And so about a week later, I sent them this letter and they called me back in. And the head administrator was there, the head of legal and the head of HR. And they said, welcome to St. Mary's, you're going to be perfect for the job. Now, technically, with my record, I shouldn't be able to work there. Technically, based on their, I can't think of their, I don't want to say rules, but they have, based on their guidelines of hiring and stuff, technically, I shouldn't be able to have this job. But I do. And it's amazing things have happened with emotional sobriety. And again, for me, emotional sobriety is, somewhere in the letter, it says we have to see that we were wrong. And I had to see where I was wrong. I was not only wrong in the way I thought, in the attitudes I had toward you, the attitudes I had toward myself, everything was wrong. And trying harder wasn't going to make it right. And I had to start looking at things from a different angle. And so it's turned out, I love working in the ER. It's fast paced. We get a lot of stuff. But it turns out it's, at least as of now, one of the places that I seem to be a maximum use to God is I get to work with these addicted infants. I'm holding these infants, they're going through withdrawals. I'm talking to these mothers, trying to get them to go into treatment. And, most of the time they don't, almost all the time they don't. And so usually being myself and another nurse, they have this little, I guess almost like a bassinet on wheels. And, I'll be holding it, but we'll put the baby in, and they have basically a holding area for all these babies that are born addicted that the mothers can't keep. And I could have never imagined that somebody like me that's been to prison 3 times, 6 different prisons, lived the type of life I've lived, would be trusted to take care of these sick infants. How does that happen? But the demands I used to make were hobbling. And I love the, Bill's language. These demands were hobbling. And they hobbled me. They got in the way of life. They got in the way of living. They got in the way of everything. Only to the degree that I can say, and sometimes this is why I say it, I said, God, you know what? Just maybe you're right about this. Just maybe. You might be right about this. I'll back off. But to the degree that I'm able to do that, I get in equal measurements like serenity, peace, just things that cannot be explained in my life. And I know this isn't, there's no graduation, there's no end, but I think for me right now, it's just, I go to these meetings and I go to Kurt's meeting and I'm being exposed to all this, for lack of a better term, other ways of looking at spirituality, this world, this program. And I'm hungry for it. I love it. I want more of it. I want more of it. I want more of it. And where I've come from, I can honestly say, in fact, it's right here. Hold on just a sec. Okay. I love this chapter to the wives. It's like practical, it tells you like how to apply the things we learn. And when I read this, and I'm reading this without any arrogance or conceit, but I can honestly say, as a direct result of being aware of a God in my life and following principles in this program, this is me today. It says, and if you don't know, the fourth classification of men, maybe you all do, is like this person that, everybody had given up on him. They drink on the way home from the hospital. They're out, they're gone. They're gone. No hope. Absolutely no hope. And this is what it says. You would suppose that men in the fourth classification would be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Everybody had given up on them. That was me. Everybody had given up. Defeat, I love this, defeat seems certain. Defeat seems certain. Yet, such men often had spectacular and powerful recoveries. There's another part of the book, and I think I'll end with this and let JP speak. It talks about, I think it's in Bill's story, it talks about men walking off into oblivion. And in my mind, I have this picture, I don't know why, but it's like they're in these heavy gray coats on a misty day, and they're kind of walking into this cloud, disappearing forever. And I was one of those people just in line, marching off into oblivion. And for whatever reason, I got plucked out. I need you to do this. I got plucked out. I have no doubt about it. I'm convinced of that fact. And what I believe for me is that's not free. There's something I need to do. And whatever comes up that I need to do, I do willingly. I try to do it to the best of my ability. I'm not perfect, but I do keep in mind that I have a responsibility to give back to what's been given to me, and I willingly do that. So I think I'll end with that. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Emerson. I didn't realize you were a 2020 baby too, so am I.
Okay.
We're siblings. That was no easy year to get sober.
Right.
So, wow. All right, JP, are you ready?
Hi, I'm JP, and I'm an alcoholic. And thank you, Sarah, for asking me to speak, and thank you, Emerson, for you asking me to speak. And I just want to say a shout out to Gary B. Gary's my great grand sponsor. Please send my love to Julie, Gary. And I was just grabbing a second cup of coffee, and the thought came up to say hi to Gary. And and the next thought that came was, it's very normal to feel nervous when someone like your great grand sponsor is hearing you talk, right? I mean, the alcoholic thinking would be to say, you shouldn't be nervous. It's like, you're mature enough now, you shouldn't be nervous. It doesn't, you shouldn't. And really, that's kind of like the new definition for me, because I did ask this week, while I was swimming, the thought crossed my mind, well, what's your new definition of emotional sobriety right now? Because you're meant to talk on it sometime this week. And, the new definition for me this week is feeling my feelings, but not having to feel or think something about them, right? And let me repeat that: feeling what I feel without having to think or feel something about what I think or feel. Because, I think probably this is one of the, things that gets clearest in the 4-step, especially the way that we write the 4-step in this FOTS group. It's like I get to see that there are several different opinions about who and what I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to feel and not feel, right? So for example, I'm not ever supposed to feel useless. So because I feel useless, then I hold on to a belief that I'm not supposed to feel useless. I mean, that can be translated as, I'm above feeling useless. I'm Superman and nothing touches me. It's like feelings are for sissies, right? I mean, whatever belief it is that I hold on to so that I don't have to feel useless. Whoever said it's wrong to feel useless? Whoever said it's wrong to feel restless, irritable, and discontent? And I don't mean being stuck forever in feeling restless, irritable, and discontent. Because if I'm stuck in feeling that, what it means is that somewhere there's a belief of someone not being allowed to feel restless, irritable, and discontent. And that's the obsession. And my current sponsor likens that to, a dog going back to its puke, right? It's like it just can't help it, right? That's the obsession, is no, this shouldn't be happening. No, I shouldn't be feeling this way. No, I shouldn't be thinking this. Whereas if there isn't that obsession present, it's just like a cloud passing through the sky. The restless, irritable, and discontent will just go all by itself, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, but it goes. I mean, that saying in the program, this too shall pass, it's so true. The speed at which it passes depends on my opinion about what's passing. If I have no opinion, it just passes. Someone was saying naturally, right? It's natural. It's very natural, just like the clouds passing through the sky. Nothing needs to be done for or against it. It's that place of neutrality that the book talks about. It's like, and all along, I mean, for decades, I used to think that the whole point of doing this work was to kill and eliminate feelings and thoughts, especially negative ones, of course, because as a good alcoholic, I only want the good ones. and the more the better, right? I used to think that being recovered was feeling good all the time, thinking good thoughts all the time, being loving all the time. And, you know, and it took a long time to realize that good and bad, or the so-called good and bad, are part of the same stick. There isn't ever a one-sided stick. Good is the other end of bad of the same stick. You know, one can't exist without the other. It's just not possible. And, you know, the world of the spirit, on the other hand, is a completely different thing. Because the world of the spirit, it's not about feeling, although feeling can overflow from the world of the spirit. And those so-called, I'd call them feelings rather than emotions, because I believe emotions are usually attached to a belief or a thought, right? Like, I'm not good enough. So the feeling attached to that thought would be feeling useless. Whereas love, there's no thought attached to that. That's just God in his manifestation. So, you know, living in the world of the spirit, there are these true feelings that get expressed in my life, which have nothing to do with me or thought or emotion. You know, it's just like when Emerson was sharing earlier on, the tears that, you know, that came out of my eyes, that was just pure gratitude and love. And it had nothing to do with me. And it had nothing to do with a thought or a belief or an idea. You know, I think the book talks about that in We Agnostics, right? It's like, you know, seeing the sun, the beauty of the sunset, you know, and seeing how beautiful God's creation is, and that having nothing to do with thought or feeling, emotion rather. You know, I mean, that feeling of awe, I mean, that's for me another manifestation of God's beauty and God's presence living out of, you know, this world of the spirit. And, you know, all that time spent, and it still goes on today. I mean, I still see from time to time a comment about how I'm feeling. You shouldn't be feeling this way. And when I believe that, well, what happens is then, you know, the alcoholic gets into action, right? It's like, it can be food, it can be TV, it can be whatever it is to try to not feel what I'm feeling. And, you know, and just seeing that somehow takes me back to the presence of God, because there's nothing I can do about it. It's not like, well, now I know this, and I'm gonna hatch a new action plan to not comment or feel on my feelings. It just doesn't work that way. You know, it's like powerlessness really means powerless. It doesn't mean now that I know I'm powerless, I'm gonna hatch a plan about how not to be powerless, because that's just a very clever way to be self-reliant once again. And you know, it's like I had a very interesting, you know, kind of experience the last 6 months with this over-reliance and absolute demand with regards to my last sponsor and my last home group. You know, I mean, I'm an all-in person, you know, so when I ask someone to be my sponsor, I'm all in. You know, my first sponsor was Joe Hawk, you know, and when he told me to go and drink and use in my first step, that's what I tried to do, only to realize I couldn't, right? Because powerlessness is on, you know, it's two ends of the same stick. I'm not able to stop myself picking up. I'm not able to make myself pick up, right? And I'm an all-in kind of person. So I was all in with this last sponsor. And, you know, and after a wonderful year, I mean, we were meeting once a week, every week, He was helping me see so many wonderful, productive things, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, he had some things, some personal things happen in his life, and he wasn't able to keep his commitments. And this went on for months and months, and there was resentment. I picked up resentment. I wrote about resentment. I shared about resentment. I did it multiple times, and the resentment was still there. I did the forgiveness stuff. I mean, I did everything that you teach me in the program. I did it, and I was still resentful. And what I couldn't see at the time was that although the resentment had been removed intellectually, emotionally it was still there, right? The emotional neediness, the story about the emotions that were going on. I didn't see those at the time. And what was going on emotionally was this idea that, and I'm sure some of you will relate, that I'm not worthy of being loved. I'm not worthy of being loved. I'm not worthy of his attention. It's like, it's my fault that, we haven't been able to get together for 3 months, and still some self-pity there. And, only through grace, the same way that Emerson was talking about being struck sober, only through grace did the idea to step away from this sponsor come as he was making amends to me. He made amends to me twice. And in the amends, when he asked me, well, what can I do? I let him know that, I didn't want to continue in our sponsee relationship anymore. And that wasn't what I said. That's just what came out. But that's not what was interesting. What was most interesting was stepping away from that relationship. And then a couple of weeks later, stepping away from a home group, which he's a center of, which I thought that I would never leave, right? I thought I'm never going to leave this group. This is the group where I belong. This is the group, that I'm going to be here forever, and so a few weeks later on, I stepped away from that. And then for the first 2 weeks, I felt this pain. And the pain was a pain of emotional withdrawal, and I didn't know that you could have emotional withdrawal from relationships, from people, and from a group. I just didn't think it was possible, and that's what I went through. I went through emotional withdrawal, and 2 weeks later, that the day came when the realization came that it's really weird. I'm just a lot happier not hanging out with these people. And it was just like, wow, no, you never really needed them in the way that you thought you did, and you were totally addicted to them without realizing and knowing you were addicted to that. And I was able to also be shown that actually I didn't really like my sponsor very much. I persuaded myself that I loved him, I really cared for him, and we had this really special relationship. And I suddenly realized, what's all this big deal been about? You don't really like him. He's not someone you would choose as a friend. It's like, and it just, it kind of gave me a completely new viewpoint on human relations, and making time to spend time with people that I do like, and that I do enjoy being with. I mean, it sounds so obvious, but for me, it was not obvious at all, because I was in the thick of it. For me, it was like, you have to go to that meeting, because if you don't go to that meeting, you're not going to get what you need in your program. You're not going to have the conscious contact that you have now. And intellectually, I knew all that was not true, but it wasn't about what I knew. It was about the emotions underneath that. Those are the things that kept driving me back. It wasn't what I knew intellectually, mentally. Of course, I've been clear that people, places, and things can't do anything for me. I've been clear about that for 30 years, 32, you know, but it's not that. That's not what keeps driving me back to those things. It's the emotion underneath that keeps driving me back. And without seeing the emotion and being clear on the emotion, I just find myself doing the same things again and again, wondering why, because I knew better intellectually, right? So that was just a wonderful experience for me, you know, these last 6 months when it came to this, you know, this emotional addiction. I mean, I don't have another word for that, or emotional alcoholic behavior, you know, or alcoholic emotional behavior. So now, you know, and investigating this emotional addiction deeper, you know, what I saw is these are all behaviors that I learned as a child, you know, growing up, you know, with my parents, at school. I have to be part of the crowd, because if I'm not part of the crowd, then I'm going to feel like I'm not part of the crowd. And I'm not supposed to feel I'm not part of the crowd. There we are, right? It's like that idea, I'm not supposed to feel what I feel. And refusing to feel what I feel, I do things which are even more harmful. Well, not even more harmful, because in truth, feeling what I feel, you know, feeling what I feel in the moment, even though there are moments where it appears as if I would be overwhelmed, that's just never really the case. It's just an illusion. You know, the worst thing really is facing that fear of not being, right? I mean, you know, some people call it, you know, the fear of death, but actually, you know, what I saw is writing more on that fear was, I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid that there's no God. You know, another way of saying that is I'm afraid that after this body dies, you know, what I truly am is just going to be a big zero and not exist, right? So, I mean, that's the worst of the worst that I can face, you know, and being given the grace to face that, you know, it's like false evidence appearing real. It just can never be. You know, God is eternal. The presence of God is eternal. It doesn't pass with the passing of this body. That's very clear, you know. So even facing that fear, you know, there's just not a being overwhelmed anymore. So this idea, and I mean, I do, you know, I really appreciate, you know, this realization that as a child, I could never face that, right? I think as children, the nervous system of a growing adult just cannot face that kind of, you know, tension, to face the fear of death or to face the emotional trauma. So the nervous system automatically shuts down as a protection mechanism. That's very natural, and it's a beautiful mechanism. But as adults, we're given what we need if we rely on God to face what we need to face. So we don't need to be, you know, governed anymore by these emotional patterns that were learned when we were children to avoid the pain that we couldn't, you know, face during those times, you know, like 45 years ago or 40 years ago, you know, it's like, but those emotional patterns can keep running if they're not faced. If they're not rooted out and faced and experienced, they can keep running. And you know, it's like I think you know, I used to hate, you know, I grew up also in the big Frank McKibben 12-step school of Gary's laughing, you know, F your feelings, right? It's like F your feelings, they're not real. And you know, and in the beginning for me, you know, that was really useful at the beginning of the path, you know, because I used to worship my emotions so deeply. You know, I think that was really always, you know, the first thing that I worshiped before, right? How I felt. And then it was what I thought, right? And so it was revolutionary to me to hear this, don't pay so much attention to how you feel. That was revolutionary to me at the beginning of the path, you know, because what it enabled was to keep relying back on God. It doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter what you feel, rely on God. Ask God for direction, ask God for power to face what you need to face with an undefended heart, right? I mean, that was a game changer. That was a total game changer for me, to not mind how I felt. However, you know, obviously that what I'm seeing today is, you know, it is important to look at these emotions, not because the emotions are important, but it's like the place they hold in my psyche, right? It's like how, you know, there can be such a thing as emotional obsession. This need to be loved, need to be loved, need to be recognized, need to be a somebody, need to be approved, right? All of that is emotion. And you know, and for me, it's been important to recognize that it's just there, rather than ignore it and tell myself, well, you shouldn't feel that way, because that's just not worked. It just, for 30 years, it hasn't worked. You know, I keep writing and it keeps being there, you know, and at some point I just need to face these emotions the way that you face your beliefs. Experience them when they come up, just experience them, you know, and even better, don't even attach a meaning to them, right? It's like my current sponsor encourages me not even to give them a name, just experience it for what it is. And what it is just energy. You know, the moment I put a name to it, I'm already good or bad. Oh, this is bad. You're feeling useless. This is bad. There's already a story going on, you know, and it's the stories that are the problem. It's not the emotion. The emotion, there's no problem with emotions. It's a story about them that gets me into trouble. And I'm going to end with that and open it up, I guess, for questions or comments or sharing. Once again, thank you very much for asking me. It's great to be here.
JP, thank you so much. Oh my God, you just, wow, you gave me such a gift. You just freed me up to be okay to be human. So, oh my gosh, thank you. That just fed my soul. So I know that you and Emerson have friends in here. First, if you guys would like to call on a couple of friends you want to hear from, would you like to do that?
Emerson, go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks. How about my friend Tal?
I was just in the process of leaving, but I won't leave. Hey, Emerson. I'm Tal. I'm an allonomic. I don't have a allergy outside my body, but I make my own drugs from my internal drugstore. And for that, I am an addict. Emerson and I were litter mates a couple of years ago in the BBA program, and I got to know him pretty well and just blown away by his story. And I've got one story about that. I was I was a new host and a new tech person for an hour noon meetings. And I was new. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was teching for Emerson when he was the speaker. And it was the first time I heard his story, really heard his story. And I was just blown away. This man has a story that everybody needs to hear. And at the end of the meeting, I realized I hadn't recorded it. It was my job to record the speaker. I didn't record this speaker who moved me so much. So I quit. And I don't know how many people here know Pat A, but Pat was in charge of that Tuesday noon meeting. And I told Pat, I said, I quit. I'm not worthy. I can't do this. I'm making people suffer for not hearing great stories, blah, blah, blah. And Pat sent me a text and he said, so what's next for you? A public flogging? That changed it. That changed everything. That was the lesson I learned for not recording Emerson. It wasn't about not recording Emerson. It was about me quitting a program. Self-defeating beliefs, as we were talking about tonight. So that basically was a turning point for me. And we've been brothers ever since and always will be. And I'm always moved when I hear him speak. Also, JP, man, I don't know you very well, but you just rocked me tonight. And I learned so much from thoughts. And every place I go, half my family are alcoholics. I love alcoholics. I'm surrounded by alcoholics, and I learn from alcoholics. And I'm so grateful that I have alcoholics in my family and in my life. So with that, I'll just let go. And I'm Tal. I'm an Al-Anon-ic. I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks.
A flogging probably would have done you some good, Tal. So anyway, I'm going to call on my friend Nancy.
Hi, my name is Nancy and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Emerson and Tal and JP. To hear the story of people who have recovered, who have had that spiritual awakening and how they view life and how they deal with life is beautiful. I could call my sister, who I know loves me dearly, but if I told her a situation that I was dealing with, she's not going to mention God. She's not. Even though she believes in God, she's not going to mention God. But also, just the idea of coming to know that self-reliance fails me can make all the difference in your life. How many ways have we tried to make our life work of our own accord? Us trying to do it. I just talked to a lady today and she's moving along, but that was a major part that she's trying to come to see, is that it's her trying to do her will to make her life work. And she never saw it, even in the first step, she didn't see it. And then to keep talking and going through different situations and to be able to point out God's will as opposed to her will. And she said, every time I always tell her, what did your prayers render? Did you pray? Did you pray? I wished I had that in my life, but God knew what he was doing. I told her today that God has something good in store for us. We may not believe it. We may believe it's going to be better if we get it this way or better if we get it that way, but it's better if it's God's way. And if we could just step out of the way and allow them to do it. And so I mentioned one instance, a major instance in my life was that when my mom died, I was 27 years sober and I ended up in a mental hospital. Now, who would have thought out of that negative situation that something good would come out of it? So I was out of my mind for like 4 months. And I know, and what came out of it is God took care of me because I was too crazy out of my mind to have taken care of myself. And it showed in all my behavior. It showed. And so who would have thought out of a situation like that, which was a life situation, that I would come to know and love God more and to be able to put my trust and reliance on them when the information caught up with me, because I didn't get that information or come to know self-reliance failed me until 2 years ago. And now I know, so when I look back on that experience now, I see like out of adversity, I learned how much God loved me and that I could trust him in a way that I never would have been able. I'm assuming I couldn't have learned any other way because God brought me to that much later. Emerson, I too love your story and I love hearing you share. And I just smiled when I came on this meeting and heard you. And then to hear that your sponsor was sharing, because I've been wanting to get more familiar with the person behind your sponsorship, your sponsorship line, because you have grown an awful lot. I mean, beyond a lot of people that are in Big Book Awakening or on this program, you have grown so much, and now I have a better picture of how that took place. Thank you also, JP. Thank you.
JP, do you want to call on some people?
How about Linda?
Got it.
Yeah. Oh, hi, JP. Hi, Emerson. Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Alananek. I like that, Alananek. Boy, you both said so much. I came in a little late, but I'm so glad I got to hear what I got to hear from you, Emerson. And I always love hearing what the two of you have to say. God, I could go so many different directions with what you've both said. And I think it just triggered so much. What you were saying about kind of like allowing our emotions. And I think about when, I was in a program for my eating disorder, and there were so many different offsets of the program, and thinking that I had to do it all and, do it all perfectly and go, and that everything was relying on, what I did. And it became just so much self-reliance. And what I realized, was that it was really managing and controlling. And it was basing everything on the human power, or my disease just kind of shape-shifting in a different direction. And what ended up happening is that I did relapse. And what and when I was completely released was when I actually went to a therapist, and we started allowing me to have feelings and allowing me to, looking back, what I saw was a fifth step. It was really allowing myself to share my deepest secrets and my deepest emotions. And she never said you can't feel that way. Contrary, she said, if you get angry or have any feelings toward me, please tell me. And I would show up and I would tell her what those feelings were. And suddenly, amazingly, they would just disappear. I'd have a resentment, or what I thought was a resentment, or something that got triggered in me. And what I began to notice was this wasn't, and here's this therapist, this blank slate. And here what I noticed is that most of everything that gets triggered in me comes from within me, and comes from these old stories and narratives from my childhood. And in seeing that, it's not that the feelings didn't come up, but it was sort of like when they came up and I could just look at them, and I could look at them tenderly and with compassion, like, oh gosh, that's little Linda right there. That's when little Linda didn't get this. And, now, I have this program, and I have these tools and these steps, and I have, you know, I feel like I'm a wave in the ocean, right? And I don't have to do self-reliance and depend on myself or rules or, you know, whatever. And, you know, so that's really, that was the gift. And the funny thing is, it was outside of program, but yet it was program. And what I'm finding, you know, the longer I'm around and the longer I'm in these programs is that, you know, we think that the answers are all in the meetings and they're not. It's like, it's about looking for the signs. It's about, you know, asking God and taking the pause and kind of just allowing things to happen rather than feeling like I have to manage and do and get to the answer. And, you know, and not that I don't do that. Like sometimes, you know, I'm surrendered. I try to do, you know, when something really triggers me, you know, I can get, you know, starting into the managing and controlling until I'm absolutely surrendered. And then it's like, okay, I've tried everything. I can't do that. That self-reliance and stepping back and allowing spirit to come in, you know, and lead me where I'm going. So thank you both. And hi, Sarah. Thank you for, and Dawn and, and Bill. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see all of you. I haven't been on this meeting in a while. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Gary, do you feel like sharing tonight?
Okay, a little bit. I really want to say how much I've enjoyed Emerson and you and Linda just now. And a comment in reverse from that, Linda, you talked about the pause there. And a bunch of the guys I run with talk about the power of the pause, particularly after it's gotten us out of deep doo-doo. And it's worked out. And Emerson, I kind of been watching you off and on, and the reactions on your face when people are talking, you're absorbing stuff that I wish I could do quickly. And great job for you. And JC, good to hear from you. You mentioned Big Frank McKibben, and just for you that have never heard of him, he was a lawyer, so you know you're in trouble there. He was 6'6" and crowding probably 350 pounds. And there was another big guy in AA in Denver back then, and he and Big Frank would fight, and Frank just always beat him to a pulp. But after they both got sober, they were great friends, and if you understand that there was mostly loving for you and they're wanting to get your attention when they're hollering at you. It takes you a while to do that. You could go through several changes of clothes, but it just did. And I remembered watching him one time. I went to his meeting. It was a 12 and 12 meeting in Denver. And there was a priest attending that meeting who couldn't stay sober. And that meeting happened to get there. I didn't know the priest that well, but it got there. He came in there and asked to get started again and do that. And when it got to Big Frank's turn to talk, there were tears in his eyes. And he says, "Father, you take another drink and I'm going to kill you." And tears were running down his eyes, and that was his passion for that. So he was often mistaken about those things we love so much. And along with that, I had been working with a bunch of other people in the Denver Young People's Group, and we had I guess you would call it a step workshop. I didn't know that's what it was, but there was about 15 of us, well, 14 of us at one point in it. When one of the guys in the group, Don Fritz was running the thing, but there was a guy in the group, and we were come to the third step. And he and Lee suggested that we all join hands and pray the third step prayer together. And so we did that with it, but he wanted us to hold hands and do it. Now, this was a long time ago, and a room full of boys holding hands just wasn't cool. And anyway, but he said, if you don't know it, read it and pray it with us. And so we did that. And after the meeting, I went home and I asked God to make that prayer real. Please make that prayer real. I can't stand this stuff any longer. And the following night, Julie and I had made a deal. We lived close in the south side of Denver to an AA meeting and her Al-Anon meeting. And my AA meeting left out at 8 o'clock and her Al-Anon meeting started at 8 o'clock and it was maybe a 5-minute drive. And so I said, well, I'll go to my meeting and then as soon as I can, I'll leave there and I'll come over and you can leave before I get there. It would only be 5 minutes or so. And the kids would be by themselves out of 5 minutes. So we made that deal. And I go to this meeting and I'm not really paying attention. I walk in and I take a seat and all of a sudden I get kind of a touch on the arm and I look over, no shit, it's Frank. And we sat there, we went to the meeting and went over and we all stood up and said the Lord's Prayer. And then for some reason, I don't think either one of us asked the other to do it. We both sat down. And he's looking at him. Even sitting up, he was taller than I was. And I'm, back then I was probably 6'2". I don't know how much I shrunk since. But I looked at him, didn't know what to say. And I said, I got to tell you something, Frank. I said, you don't scare me one damn bit anymore. And he leaned back and laughed and came around and hugged me. And that's when I thought I was going to die. It just did. So anyway, that story. I got home, got there in time for just 2 of the 3 kids. The youngest was asleep when I got there. But Big Frank touched an awful lot of people. Real quickly, gosh, it was a great meeting. I love this meeting. And the insight, Emerson and JP, he's always had it. JP has it. With that, thanks so much, all of you.
Thank you, Gary. Love you. Sarah, how about you?
You can't mean me. Do you mean Sarah H?
Oh, no, you, Sarah B.
Oh. Well, thank you for calling on me. And I just, I wish you had a podcast or something. The only exposure I have to you is like, when you've shared here and if I see you on a flyer, but you've just been such a powerful example for me, just a North Star for real. I am in awe of your connection and I want what you have. And you and Emerson both, I was floored that Emerson, just all the work you're doing. And I'm so grateful to be in touch with you all. Yeah, what you said about trying to like manage and control feelings when they crop up as a form of self-reliance, I totally get that. And I realized that I'm new again and I'm still, I had 5 years of recovery and then I went out and, coming back, it's just been a different level of surrender, a different experience. Kurt Z is always sharing about, being released. I know what happened to me didn't come from me. It was definitely an act of providence. And I know that I had a white light experience and now, trying to navigate this path and always kind of questioning myself. And if I feel a certain way, well, I shouldn't feel like that. That's bad, and then this anxiety crops up in me that now I need to control that. So you're so right about the minute I put that label on it, I'm just already off to the races into self-reliance and how can I fix, manage, and control this? And I'm sure I've heard that before, but the way you just said it, like I've just heard it for the first time. And just thank you so much for that. I mean, that I'm going to remember that and I'm going to listen to this many times, I'm sure. So just thank you from my heart. So I'm going to open it up. Does anybody have any questions for our speakers or feel led to share?
If I could, I'd like to call on Dawn.
Sure.
Is that okay? All right.
Thank you, Emerson. Thank you, JP, and thank you, Sarah. You're doing a great job. I jot notes and I've been drawing. I drew a picture of Emerson while he was talking and texted it to him. But one of the first things I do or try to do if I have my papers with me is to listen to the reading and see what comes out for me this week. What's the line that snaps me to the attention during the reading? And it was real early in it. And the thing that caught me was, and I think it's relevant to what everybody has shared, is I've taken immense wallops in the area of top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance. Because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. And so I thought, well, that's fun. What the heck does that mean? You know, I failed to grow up emotionally. I get it. I'm emotionally immature. But when it speaks to, you know, I react to my feelings. I do something about them, whether it's navigate them, like JP said, figure out why they don't matter or why they matter more than they ever mattered in the first place. And, you know, just around the roller coaster with all that. I know all about that one. I do that on a daily basis. And that is pretty much the crux of my problem. So, but the one that really popped in there was I've taken immense rallies because of my failure to grow up spiritually. And I think that as I was listening, and I love how you referred to the endless procession of thoughts, because that just defeated, debilitated, alcoholic situation. I don't have to be drinking to be in that endless procession. And that spiritual bankruptcy that makes the roller coaster of the emotional swings so much more vicious and, you know, uncontrollable and off the charts. So and as usual in our literature, the answer is in the next paragraph. MT's taught me that. Look in the next paragraph because that's where the answer is. And it says, my God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible and how very painful. And it's talking about that, the roller coaster and the judgment and me trying to escape my feelings and my emotions to discover finally that all along I've had the cart before the horse. And I will spend tremendous amounts of time trying to super navigate how I feel, what I did, why I did it, and why it's your fault. And I mean, I'll get there eventually. It's your fault. But the truth is I always have the cart before the horse. If I bring God to my whatever position I'm in, if God's in position, or if I'm in position with God, I have the neutrality that you talked about. That place where I don't have to be afraid of how I feel, what I said, what happened, questioning, doubting, wondering, coulda, shoulda, woulda, what. And that endless procession of like thoughts is incredible how it can on the regular, if not attended to, let's say that, treated, if you will, it can become completely unmanageable in my regular experience. And then I think the thing that's most present for me in my recovery right now is the idea of becoming a channel of peace that God can really use. And if I'm doing all that, none of that's present. And for that, when I'm in that is where my uselessness comes up, and it makes me feel spiritually inept. And it's such a sad place for an alcoholic to be, because we all know what that means. And because I have to be able to help others to survive. And so I really enjoy listening to both of you share. Emerson, if you show up in Colorado, you're going to show up in Colorado. You're on my short list. So
Okay.
I've been trying to figure out what, I keep watching the registration thing going, did he register yet? Anyway, thank y'all. And I'll see you next week.
So it looks like we have time for one more. Does anybody want to share? If not, I'll call on someone. Belinda.
I am blend, I'm alcoholic. Oh gosh, for some reason the song always comes to mind when we're talking about feelings. I just checked in to see what condition my condition was in. I don't. Some people may know that one. Some people may not. But anyway, I had I experienced an expensive learning experience in the last couple of weeks. And I know for long growing up, I was used to hiding everything that I thought made me vulnerable, particularly showing that someone hurt me, like you affected me, whether it made me angry or feel scared or stupid or whatever. And then in meetings, I heard a lot of feelings aren't facts. So a couple of weeks ago, I was played, and but in this case, the facts hid my feelings, but I didn't know it. Like intellectually, I didn't have any resentment or anger. I did question my intuition, which is usually pretty good, and judgment. I was also scared because I was threatened, but I didn't realize any of it until something. I was talking to somebody, and somebody at Costco unloaded their car, and then she put the cart right behind my car. And as I was talking to another person about something totally different, I opened the car door and I caught myself going, I'm getting ready to get out of the car and tell this lady, I'm so sorry that you can't walk your cart, right over there, and I have to put it behind my car. And I shut the door and I was like, God, where did that come from? And then just kept on with the conversation. And then I saw in my rearview mirror, I saw their taillights light up and knew they were backing out. And I started to start the car. And I was going to back up so they couldn't back up and get out and tell them what I was afraid, what I knew I shouldn't do, which was get out and say anything. It may have been the car that was sitting there waiting to get in their spot that made me, I don't know what made me stop. I just couldn't believe that I didn't even know, that I was feeling those. But that's how I know I just have a long way to go. That it came out when I least expected it. And obviously I have a lot of work to keep doing, but we're not perfect. I'll never get all the way there. I just have to keep trying. And I think that's all that's expected of us, or of me anyway. Well, I think that's all expected of us. That's it. That's what came to mind during their shares, which were awesome.
Thank you, Belinda. So, I hate to close this meeting. I wish I could just keep you all like, don't go anywhere. But we have a way of closing. We stay muted and go into our quiet room and say a prayer, and then we can come back and thank our wonderful speakers. Thank you again, JP and Emerson. Thank you.
JP Emerson, great job.